Hi there, I'm Delaney. My brother laughed when Mom left me nothing but a letter. But my daughter read 7 words that changed everything. And no one in the family saw it coming. Before we dive in, let us know what time are you listening to this and where are you tuning in from? Drop a comment below. We love knowing where our stories reach. And hey, if you believe family secrets are meant to be uncovered, hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Mom, what if there's more to this? Odin's voice was soft, but in that moment, it sliced through the air louder than anything else in that suffocating office. I couldn't take my eyes off the letter, creased, faded, and folded in a strange way, like someone had tried to hide something. The room was still filled with people raising glasses to a legacy I apparently had no place in. I looked around. Gareth was talking loudly to a cousin, cracking a joke like nothing just happened. Vienna basked in her self-appointed sainthood, accepting hugs and teary smiles like she'd just lost a best friend instead of the woman she had controlled up until her final breath. I unfolded the letter again, smoothing it out on my lap. Odin leaned in, her breath warm on my arm. There, near the bottom, under the signature line, was a faint indentation, not writing, exactly, more like the trace of something pressed between the paper. I held it up to the light. There was a tear in one of the creases. Something had been removed, torn out. My stomach dropped. Mom, Odin whispered, why would she send you a letter like that? And only that? It was a good question. One I hadn't let myself ask yet. Because they wanted to humiliate me. I muttered, too low for anyone else to hear. And because someone made sure I'd never know what she really said. Delaney, you're still here? Mr. Halverson, the lawyer, approached with that tight smile Southern men use when they want you to leave without saying it. I stood. Yes, but I have a question. Was this the only thing left for me? He paused, clearing his throat. That's what we were instructed to deliver. By who? Vienna? There was the faintest twitch in his left eye. A crack in the performance. Instructions came from the executor. He said carefully. Let me guess, I said, glancing across the room. That would be my sister. He didn't deny it. I stepped closer to him, lowering my voice. You and I both know this feels off. Tell me, was there any mention of a second letter? A sealed envelope? Halverson looked over his shoulder, as if making sure no one was listening, then leaned in. I can't confirm anything, Delaney, but if I were you, I wouldn't throw that paper away just yet. He walked off without another word. By the time we made it to the car, Odin was unusually quiet. She sat in the passenger seat, hugging her backpack like a shield. The trees outside the window blurred as we drove through the Spanish moss-covered streets of Savannah. But my thoughts were razor sharp. I had left this city to escape a family that fed on guilt and thrived on selective memory. Yet here I was, right back where I swore I'd never be. Just like always, I came back hoping for a connection. A scrap of something that proved I wasn't just a footnote in my mother's life. And just like always, I got silence. Except this time, something was different. I had Odin, and Odin didn't buy it. She always had a secret drawer. My daughter said suddenly, in her study, remember? You showed it to me when I was little. I blinked. The one behind the fireplace? Odin nodded. If she wrote something and didn't want anyone else to see it. It was enough. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in the guest room of a budget motel on the outskirts of town, staring at the ceiling, playing through every memory of that house like an old VHS tape, blurry and out of sync. Every hallway, every drawer, every whispered conversation that stopped when I entered the room. By morning, I had a plan. We would go back, not for closure, screw closure, for the truth, asterisk. But first, I needed to get inside that house without Vienna seeing me. Hey, I said as Odin came out of the bathroom, brushing her hair, how do you feel about a little detour before we head home? She grinned. Breaking in? I raised an eyebrow. More like breaking through, asterisk. I wasn't going to wait around for someone to hand me a version of the story that fit their narrative. I was going to find out what my mother left behind. And not the version Vienna handpicked. Because if there really was a missing letter, or worse, a stolen one, then this wasn't just erasure. It was sabotage, asterisk. Dash. Odin leaned closer, her brow furrowed. There's something weird about that fold. I looked down at the paper again. The edges were worn, and the middle crease had a thickness to it that didn't belong. I traced it gently, the tips of my fingers sensing a resistance. My hands trembled slightly, but I forced my voice steady. You're right, I murmured. It doesn't feel like just one sheet. Before I could examine it further, Vienna's heels clicked across the hardwood floor as she took center stage like a soap opera matriarch. ready for her monologue. Since we're all still here, she said with a syrupy smile, I thought I'd share what Mom wrote to me. I believe her words deserve to be heard. She pulled a pristine envelope from her bag, unfolded the thick stationery with theatrical slowness, and began reading aloud. My darling Vienna, she recited, you've always been the one I could count on. You were there when no one else was. You carried me when I couldn't walk alone. I'm proud of the woman you've become. People around the room nodded with approval. Some even gave soft sighs, like it was a scene out of a Hallmark movie. I stood frozen in place, biting the inside of my cheek so hard I tasted copper. Vienna's voice dropped to a reverent hush. She always said I was the one who stayed. She folded the letter carefully and pressed it to her chest like a sacred relic. Odin turned to me, confused. That doesn't sound like Grandma. At least not how she talked to us. I didn't answer, because deep down I had the same thought. And then came the blow I didn't expect. Not from Vienna, but from Gareth. He sauntered over with that grin he wore like armor. Kid, he said to Odin, your mom walked away and never looked back. That's why you didn't get anything. Harsh truth. I know. My heart sank. Odin blinked up at him. That's not true, she whispered. Gareth shrugged. If it makes you feel better to believe that, go ahead. Odin's eyes filled with tears. But he didn't cry. He just clenched his little jaw, turned away, and walked toward the hallway. Excuse me, I said tightly, brushing past Gareth without looking at him. Odin. I caught up to my daughter near the coat rack. He was hunched slightly, arms wrapped around himself. Did she really hate you? He asked. Voice barely audible. No, I said instantly. She didn't. Then why did they act like you don't exist? That question stabbed deeper than any insult Vienna could craft. Because some people rewrite history when the truth makes them uncomfortable. But we're not here to make them comfortable. Asterisk. Just then Riley, my cousin who hadn't spoken to me in a decade, walked by and muttered under his breath. Didn't Grandma always say your mom was a mistake? I whipped around. What did you just say? She gave a smug smile. Oh, I didn't mean it like that. It's just, everyone knows she stopped talking to you for a reason. I stepped toward her, but Odin grabbed my hand. Let's just go, he said softly. We left without saying another word. Hours later, we sat on the edge of the motel bed. The letter lay between us like a live wire. I picked it up again, running my fingers across that strange crease. It was barely visible, but there was a ridge. Something buried between the folds. Grab the flashlight, I said. Odin reached into his backpack and clicked it on. I angled the beam under the paper. There, he said, pointing. That spot. It's thicker, like something's hidden. I brought the paper closer to my face. Squinting, the seam along the edge wasn't glued. It had been sealed with heat. Someone had tried to hide whatever was once tucked inside. Odin leaned in, voice steady now. What if this isn't the real letter? I looked up and saw Odin's fingers gently pressing along the seam again. He wasn't afraid. He was curious, focused. I envied him for that. The kind of quiet determination that wasn't tainted yet by betrayal. Let's check again, he said, aiming the flashlight more precisely. This time, the beam highlighted something I hadn't noticed before. A faint outline on the back of the letter. Almost like a square imprint. My pulse quickened. I slid a nail beneath the top layer of the paper. It lifted with more resistance than it should have, as if someone had pressed it down deliberately. When it peeled back, a tiny strip of tape lifted with it. This isn't the full letter. I breathed. Someone doctored it. Asterisk. But why? Odin asked, voice thinking. Why would they do that? Because they didn't want me to see what she really wrote. Asterisk. He stared at me, wide-eyed, and I saw it in his face, the first real moment of understanding that we were dealing with something deeper than just family tension. This was manipulation, designed and calculated. I sat back in the kitchen chair and exhaled slowly. Outside the window, the hum of crickets mingled with the low rumble of distant thunder. We were alone, but not really. I could feel the presence of everyone who had tried to erase me still hovering like smoke in the corners of that room. Mom, Odin said quietly, if that's not the real letter, do you think there's another one somewhere? It took me a second to answer. If there was, it would have been somewhere Mom thought was safe. And Vienna would have done anything to keep it hidden. He nodded slowly, then said, she locked the library the same day Grandma died. Remember? I looked up, startled. How do you know that? I heard her tell Uncle Gareth. She changed the locks the morning after the funeral. She said, nobody gets in. Not even the cleaning lady. I swallowed hard. That library had always been Mom's sanctuary, her space. Her files, her letters, her journals. If there was a place where the truth still lived, it was in that room. And now it was under lock and key. I remembered that room like a dream: velvet drapes, old floor lamp with the gold fringe, the faint scent of vanilla and leather-bound books. She had always written her Christmas cards in there. And once, years ago, she showed me a drawer with a false bottom. She had called it her little fortress. Vienna made sure we couldn't get in. I murmured. Odin's voice was sharper now. Why would someone change the locks the day after their mom dies unless they had something to hide? I didn't answer because he was right. It didn't add up. The room fell silent again. Odin busied himself with organizing the letter pieces while I stared at my phone lying on the table. I tapped the screen and scrolled back through my voicemail list until I found the last message my mother had left me. It was short, tired. You don't have to come to the hospital. Vienna's handling it. That was it. No, I love you. No, I want to see you. Just an offhand statement that at the time I believed meant I wasn't wanted. But now I wasn't so sure. What if she hadn't meant that at all? What if she never wanted to be cut off? What if that was just what Vienna told her to say? I stared down at the device in my hand and hated that I'd let that one message become my truth for so long. I had clung to it like it was confirmation of every doubt I'd ever had about my place in this family. And maybe it had never been the truth to begin with. Odin stood up, folding the letter carefully and slipping it into a plastic sleeve he pulled from his school folder. If we can't find out what was taken, he said, we have to find where the real one is. I nodded slowly. There's only one place it could be, I said. He looked at me, eyes bright with purpose. Then we break in tomorrow. Asterisk. Dash dash dash. Odin was already by the front gate when we pulled up the next morning. The early spring sunlight filtered through the oaks lining the street, dappled shadows dancing across the cracked sidewalk. I cut the engine and sat in silence for a beat. Just seeing the house again made my chest tighten. The peeling shutters, the uneven brick steps, the wind chimes still hanging by the side door that hadn't chimed since Dad passed. As I stepped out of the car, the air was thick, not with heat, but with memory, the kind that clings to your clothes and seeps into your bones. Odin tugged on the latch. It's rusted, he said, jiggling it. We hadn't touched the fence yet when the screen door across the street creaked open. Miss Hilda stood there, hand on her cane, eyes squinting through the sunlight. She didn't wave, she didn't smile, she walked slow but determined across the road, pausing just short of the fence. She asked about you, she said. I blinked, unsure I heard right. Who? Reba, she answered, nodding toward the house. A few weeks before she passed. I gripped the edge of the gate, knuckles whitening, my voice caught, but I forced the words out. What did she say? Miss Hilda leaned on the post. Her breath shallow. She said, if my daughter ever came back, do you think she'd forgive me? Asterisk. I stared at her, stunned. She never said anything to me. I whispered. She was scared. Hilda said simply, of what she'd already done, of what she couldn't undo. I swallowed hard, a weight pressing into my chest. For years I convinced myself she stopped loving me. But maybe, just maybe, she didn't stop. She just didn't know how to fix what broke. She kept looking at that window on the second floor. Hilda went on, pointing with her cane, said it used to glow at night when you stayed up reading. I looked up. The glass reflected the sunlight now. But I remembered that room. My old sanctuary. My childhood books. The diary she once gave me. I always figured, Hilda continued, if she was waiting for anyone, it was you. Odin stepped closer beside me. I could feel the question he wasn't asking radiating in the space between us. We thanked Miss Hilda quietly. She didn't linger, just turned and shuffled slowly back toward her porch. A quiet sentinel retreating into shadow. Once she was out of earshot, I circled the side yard. Each step stirred old memories. Vienna pushing me off the porch swing. Gareth teaching me how to ride a bike until I fell and broke my wrist. Mom baking pecan pie with her hair in a bun. Humming that same Patsy Cline song. I stopped behind the house. The grass was taller back here. Unkempt, untouched. Something cracked inside me. Something sharp. My brain flicked through time like a broken reel. I was 19 again, crying on the phone. Gareth's voice on the other end. You made your bed. Now lie in it. He had been my protector once. Before Vienna's stories became gospel. Before siding with her meant easier dinners. Fewer confrontations. More inheritance. He didn't just let me be erased. He helped do the erasing. Odin's voice pulled me back. There's a window open. Mom. Over there by the laundry room. I walked over and looked. The frame was old. It probably hadn't been latched properly in months. I reached up, testing the edges. It gave a little. I think we can slide it. Odin whispered. I nodded, taking in a shaky breath. Listen to me, I said. We're not here to break or take. We're here to bring back something Mom may have wanted me to find. Something that's buried before the dirt even hit her grave. Odin looked up at me. Eyes steady. I get it. I turned once more toward Miss Hilda's porch. She was still sitting there, cane resting across her lap, watching us silently. My hands trembled only for a second. Let's go inside before someone stops us. I hoisted Odin up through the laundry room window first. He disappeared into the dark house with a soft thud, then turned and reached for my hand. I paused, eyes scanning the yard one last time. Miss Hilda's porch light was off now. Even the neighborhood felt like it was holding its breath. Inside, the air was musty and stale. Not rotten, just forgotten, like time had thickened and settled on every surface. I slipped in after Odin, my knees brushing the cracked tile floor. The kitchen looked just like it had the last time I was here years ago. Same plastic fruit bowl on the counter. Same curtain with faded lemons above the sink. Odin's flashlight cut a soft beam across the hallway. Upstairs, he whispered. I nodded, motioning for him to move slowly. We crept down the hallway like ghosts, afraid of waking the dead. At the foot of the stairs, I paused, hand resting on the old banister. It creaked beneath my grip, an old, familiar protest. Upstairs, the second-floor hallway was darker, quieter. The door to Mom's bedroom was shut. But it was the study I was after. Wait, I whispered. Let's try the study first. Odin followed without a word. I pushed on the handle. It didn't budge. Locked, of course. I looked at him, then at the frame. Something about it didn't sit right. Vienna had changed the locks right after the funeral. Who does that unless there's something they don't want found? I knelt, ran my fingers along the molding. That's when I saw it. The faint outline of where the baseboard had been loosened. Not recently, not by accident. Hand me the flashlight, I said. Odin passed it over, and I shone it down the seam. Dust had gathered, but one corner looked cleaner, like it had been touched. I dug my fingernails under the edge and pulled. The board came up with a dry pop. Inside, wedged between insulation and floor slats, was a small bundle wrapped in faded dish towel cloth. My breath caught. Mom, I whispered, not even sure why. I pulled it out carefully, unwrapping it on the study's hardwood floor. Inside, a manila envelope, handwritten across the front in my mother's familiar, loopy cursive, asterisk, for Delaney. Only if Vienna locks this door, asterisk. My hands shook. I opened it slowly. A letter. A second one. Not the crumpled one from the will reading. This one was dated 5 months ago. I started reading. Asterisk, if you're reading this. Delaney. Then Vienna's already shut the door behind me. Maybe she locked it for good. I don't know. I only know that you deserved better than I gave you. And I'm so sorry. I let my silence become Vienna's weapon. My eyes blurred. I tried in my own way to reach you. But pride is poison. It made me choose peace with the loudest child and distance from the strongest. I know Vienna has her version of things. But I've left mine here. So you can finally hear me without her interruption. Asterisk. I could barely breathe. Odin looked at me. Is it real? I handed him the letter. It's her handwriting. No doubt. He knelt beside me, scanning it in silence. Then he pulled out his phone and snapped a picture. Just then, we heard something. A door creaked. Not ours. Downstairs. My body went rigid. Odin looked at me, eyes wide. Back window. I whispered. We scrambled, stuffing the letter back into the towel, slipping it under my coat. We barely made it to the bottom of the stairs when Vienna's voice rang out behind us. Well, didn't take you long to dig, did it? She was standing in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, eyes gleaming. You always did love sneaking around, she added. Odin stepped closer to me. I felt his hand graze mine, quiet and firm. I held Vienna's stare. You locked that room, I said, and hid what wasn't yours to hide. She smiled, smug. You always thought everything was about you, Delaney. But Mom left me in charge for a reason. Yeah, I said calmly. Because you silenced her. Asterisk. Vienna's expression flickered just for a second. Then she straightened, mask back on. You shouldn't be here. I stepped forward, slow but sure. And yet, I said, here I am. Her eyes narrowed. You won't win this. I didn't smile. I didn't blink. I'm not here to win. I'm here to remember. And you can't stop that anymore. Asterisk. Dash. You wanna know what else I found? Vienna? The invitation said, celebration of life. But it felt more like a staged press conference. White folding chairs lined the yard. Sunlight bouncing off silver platters of catered brunch food and a 12-foot-tall floral arch framed Vienna like she was the bride at her own event. I stepped out of the car, heels crunching on gravel. Odin walked beside me, unusually quiet, his hand clutched the envelope, the one we had pulled from the baseboard, and my purse held the one thing Vienna hadn't expected anyone to find. We crossed the lawn just as Vienna clinked her mimosa glass. The crowd turned to her as if on cue. Her hair was blown out to perfection, makeup soft and grieving, Oscar-worthy. She cleared her throat, holding a folded sheet of paper with faux humility. "I wrote this for Mom," she said, voice trembling in just the right places. "I wanted to read it today so she's not forgotten." Not forgotten? She erased my name from her life, and now had the gall to perform sainthood in broad daylight. She used to say, Vienna continued. "Vienna is my constant, my comfort, my home." My jaw locked. I glanced at Odin. He wasn't looking at Vienna. He was watching me. Vienna's voice lifted. "I stayed. I sacrificed. And I know if she were here, she'd be proud." People clapped politely. Some nodded, already lulled by the story Vienna had always told, the good daughter versus the absent one. I stepped forward. "Let's talk about that, asterisk," I said, calm but clear. Heads turned. Silence fell like a snapped violin string. Vienna blinked. "Delaney, this isn't the time, isn't it?" I held her gaze. "Seems like you've had all the time. All the stories." Aunt Riza shifted in her seat. Someone coughed. Vienna tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, then smiled, the kind of smile you use on dangerous customers when you're behind the register. "The will's been settled," she said. "This isn't about who saw the original." I cut her off. "The one Mom wrote, not the one the lawyer read." Whispers buzzed. Gareth stood near the lemonade table, pretending not to notice. Vienna narrowed her eyes. "Everything was handled legally." "By whom?" I asked. "With what power of attorney?" "From my purse." I pulled out the document. "Because the one you submitted was forged, asterisk." I unfolded the pages. Her signature at the bottom had been copied from a birthday card. Even a teenager with a scanner could tell. Murmurs rippled. "She forged Reba's POA?" Someone whispered. Vienna's voice rose, but her pitch cracked. "That's ridiculous. Delaney, you've always been paranoid." I didn't respond. I just opened the letter, the real one. Mom's handwriting was unmistakable, loopy in places, tight in others. I read it aloud. Asterisk, "Delaney, I failed you in more ways than I can count. I let others speak over your truth. I should have fixed that. I want you to know I saw you. I loved you." No one clapped this time. Not a soul moved. Asterisk. Vienna's face went pale. That was never meant to be." "She erased it," I said, "just like she erased every photo. Every mention of me." She buried the letter. She doctored another one. Gareth stepped forward. "Where did you get that from?" "The house," I replied. "From where she hid it because she knew I might come back one day. And she knew what Vienna was capable of." Aunt Riza asked softly, "Is that really Reba's handwriting?" I handed her the letter. She read it, then passed it to our cousin Mitchell. Vienna tried to laugh. "This is absurd," but her voice wobbled. She reached for the glass of water beside her, but missed it slightly, her hand trembling. "She always told me the truth would eat through the lies eventually," I said. Turns out she was right. Someone clapped just once. It stopped almost immediately, but it had happened. Vienna stared at me, stunned, her mouth slightly open but no words coming out. She looked ready to strike. But so was I. The room didn't breathe. Vienna stood stiff as stone by the fireplace, her jaw tight, eyes darting around for allies that weren't there anymore. The brunch crowd had thinned to only those bold or nosy enough to linger for the spectacle unraveling in real time. The letter lay exposed on the coffee table, still open, and from what I read it aloud, the ink hadn't even dried in their minds. And yet Vienna already called it irrelevant. She kept her arms folded, but her fingers trembled where they gripped her elbows. Gareth was the first to speak. "That could have been faked." "Then prove it," I said, stepping forward. "Let's get it authenticated." He looked over at Vienna, uncertain. For a moment, he didn't seem so sure she'd back him up. But Vienna recovered quickly. "There's no point," she said, her voice loud, too sharp for the still room. "The estate is settled. The court filings were finalized. It's over." "No," I said firmly. "It's not." I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. Already dialing. The tone rang once, then again, before a calm voice answered. "Mr. Halverson," I said, "you might want to come back inside." Minutes later, the front door creaked open. The lawyer's silhouette appeared in the archway, like a weary ghost returning to a battlefield. He glanced around at the few remaining family members. Then locked eyes with Vienna. Her expression cracked just slightly. I wasn't expecting to be called back, he said dryly. Then you didn't expect this, I replied, pointing to the letter on the table. He walked over slowly, his leather shoes whispering across the hardwood floor. When he saw the document, his shoulders sagged. Is that the original? He asked, reaching for it gently, as if afraid it might crumble in his hand. You tell us, I said. You're the one Mom trusted to handle everything. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he lowered into the chair across from me, holding the letter up to the light. His jaw worked silently. Then he sighed, a deep, resigned kind of exhale that belonged to someone who knew they'd let something slip through their fingers. This letter was delivered to my office, he said, a week before Reba passed. Vienna shifted her weight. That's not possible. He held up a hand, cutting her off. Someone came by, said Reba had a change of heart, that she dictated a new will but didn't want it filed until after the memorial. I didn't see her directly, but the messenger had a notarized form. I stared at him. Messenger. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Vienna, I said flatly. He hesitated, then gave a slow, defeated nod. I was told not to follow up, that it was a family matter. I was tired. I didn't push. Gareth stood stiff behind the couch. So what now? We're going to start this circus all over again because of one letter? This isn't a circus, I said. It's truth. And it was buried. From behind me, I heard a voice rise. Shaky but louder than I'd ever heard him. It's always been buried. Odin said. And you all helped. I turned. My son stood near the hallway entrance. Fists clenched. Chin lifted. Riley, the cousin who always had a wisecrack ready, had just whispered something under his breath. But Odin wasn't having it. She's not making drama, he said, loud enough to hush the room. You just didn't care enough to see the real story. Riley opened his mouth to retort. But Halverson raised a hand. Enough. This should have never happened. I failed the family. But more than that, I failed Reba. His voice cracked slightly. The first time I'd ever heard that kind of emotion from him. You have a chance to fix it, I said softly. So do it. The lawyer looked around the room. The broken silence, the fractured loyalty, the shame etched across faces that once looked smug. Then he nodded once. And this time, he didn't hesitate. Mr. Halverson didn't wait for anyone to speak. He stepped forward, his briefcase clicking open with precision. Hands steady, as if he had rehearsed this moment in silence long before now. He laid the documents on the table one at a time, the real letter, the signed addendum, the final inheritance directives. He adjusted his glasses and looked around the room. At me, at Vienna, at the tension curling through every breath. This letter, he began, tapping the page, is dated 3 weeks before Reba Merrick passed. It carries a notarized seal, witnessed by 2 employees in my office. There is no evidence of coercion or fraud. His voice cut through the air like a judge's gavel. He turned to Vienna. I was contacted on the morning of Reba's passing to halt any discussion of the document. By you. Vienna blinked. You have no proof. I told you to stop. Halverson didn't flinch. You sent a fax from your mother's hospice. It's in our records. You stated Reba was mentally unfit and had retracted her wishes. But we never received any signed revocation. He reached for another envelope. Here's the trust she reactivated for Odin's education. And here, he slid a smaller page toward me, is the property deed. She left you the house. Delaney, along with what was left in her personal checking account. Silence followed. Not shock. Just wait. The kind that settles in your lungs and makes it hard to speak. I swallowed, holding back whatever tears had started to rise. She meant for me to have a place again? I whispered. She wanted Odin to be taken care of? Vienna laughed. Short, sharp, brittle. You really think this changes everything? I met her gaze. It already has. But the moment that broke us didn't come from me. It came from Odin. He stepped forward, backpack slung tight against his shoulders, and pulled out a tiny silver voice recorder. My stomach dropped. I recognized it. Reba used to keep it in her nightstand drawer. I didn't know when to say this. Odin mumbled. But she gave me this the last time we visited. Said it was private, that I should only give it to Mom. He pressed play. At first, all we heard was a faint rustle. Then her voice, Reba's voice, cracked with age and vulnerability. If Delaney's listening. I'm sorry. I should have said it more. I was proud of you. You did everything I never could. And I wish I had been braver for you. My breath caught in my throat. Gareth looked down. Vienna looked away. The whole room stilled, as if no one quite knew how to exist in a world where I was no longer the scapegoat. No longer the forgotten daughter. I let the silence sit. Let it sting. And then I reached out and turned off the recorder. I didn't come here for revenge. I said quietly. I came because my son deserves to know the truth. And I do too. Asterisk. Halverson cleared his throat. Legally speaking, we'll need to refile the estate. The court can be notified by morning. Vienna opened her mouth, but Gareth cut her off. Just stop, he said, almost softly. Let it go. Vienna. She glared at him like he'd betrayed some unspoken pact. Halverson looked to me. And you? What would you like to do? I thought about it for a moment. About everything they took. Everything I'd clawed back. The house. The truth. My name. I want to go home. Asterisk. I said. But this time it'll be on my terms. Asterisk. He nodded. Odin took my hand. And in the corner, I saw my Aunt Brianna wiping a tear from her cheek. And for the first time in years, I had a home to go to. The front porch creaked under our weight as Odin and I sat on the steps. Mugs in hand. Warm sunlight brushing the tops of our knees. The quiet felt full, not empty, like the silence in a symphony right before the final chord. A breeze moved through the azaleas Reba once planted, carrying with it the faint scent of honeysuckle and wet soil from last night's rain. 2 weeks had passed since the letter changed everything. The house was still in transition. Half-packed boxes sat in corners like ghosts in cardboard form. And the curtains I bought on clearance still hung in crooked lines from old brass rods. But it was mine. Ours. Inside, the kitchen buzzed softly with the refrigerator's hum. On the fridge door, I had taped up the real letter. Not out of pride or pettiness, but remembrance. Below it, a yellow post-it clung defiantly. Handwritten by me. Asterisk. You were always enough. Asterisk. Odin's voice broke through the peace. Do you think she'll ever apologize? I didn't need to ask who he meant. Vienna had disappeared after the lawyer's announcement. Charleston. Someone said. No new phone number. No visits. No apology. Maybe, I replied, sipping from my mug, but I'm not waiting for it. He nodded, a quiet kind of understanding blooming between us. Later that morning, I tackled another box. This one had been buried in the back of the hallway closet. Mismatched photos, old school drawings, a letter jacket I didn't even remember keeping. And near the bottom, tucked between a birthday card and a dried corsage, was a photo of me and Reba. I was 17. She had her arms around me. And for once, there were no forced smiles. Just a quiet joy in our eyes. Real, unedited. I stared at it for a long while before walking over to the mantel and placing it front and center, next to a small vase of fresh tulips from the garden. My garden now. By afternoon, Miss Hilda came by, just like she had the Wednesday before, carrying her signature banana bread and a sharp tongue. Your mother would have been proud, she said as she sat at the table, sliding her cane aside, even if she didn't know how to show it half the time. I smiled. She left more than I thought. Not just in this house. Honey, she muttered, buttering a slice of bread. In you, asterisk. We talked for a while about the town. About church bake sales. Even about Miss Hilda's late husband's bowling trophies. And then, as if it had been planned, she stood, patted my shoulder, and left without another word. That was her way. I cleaned up, poured a second cup of tea, and sat back at the kitchen table. The afternoon sun had begun casting golden streaks across the floorboards. Odin had gone outside, kicking a soccer ball back and forth across the lawn. Free, in a way I hadn't seen since the week before Reba died. The quiet pulled me in again. I opened my journal, one I hadn't touched since before the will reading, and started to write. I walked in that room expecting to be forgotten. Instead, I found the last part of my mother that still believed in me. Not the words she never spoke, but the one she left behind. Some wounds never truly close, but they scar, they remind, and eventually they stop bleeding. I don't need Vienna's apology to feel worthy. I don't need Garrett's approval to breathe freely in this house. And I certainly don't need permission to matter. Not from a family who erased me. Not from a mother who learned too late. And not from a world that once dismissed my silence as agreement. Asterisk. You don't need their permission to matter. I wrote slowly. You just need to remember your voice. Asterisk. Outside, Odin shouted for me to watch his trick shot. I laughed and stood, the tea growing cold beside my pen. As I walked toward the door, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Not the girl they left out of the photos. Not the scapegoat, just me, and that was finally enough. This house holds everything I once lost. And now I choose what stays. Dash dash dash. Sometimes, the loudest silence is the one we carry for years. Until the moment we finally speak. Delaney's story reminds us truth doesn't expire. And neither does the right to be heard. Have you ever had to reclaim your voice after being written out of your own story? If this touched something in you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. We've got more stories just like this, raw, real, and full of redemption. Your voice matters. Your story matters. See you in the next one.